And the fact of the matter is, we as Americans value entertainment far more than we value education. And there was a time in my life where I was frustrated by that. And now I'm just embracing it. Welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Julian.
And I'm Kirsten. And today we're introducing our latest creative baby, our latest creative project, Taste the Impact. But first, I want to shout out like the 100 plus of y'all that joined the wait list for Shifting Wealth, Shaping Futures, the Invest for Better Circles, and the 40 plus at the last count. I don't even know how many people it is, but the 40 or so of y'all that have already signed up for a Spring Circle. I want to shout y'all out and say congratulations for taking the first step in learning more about values-aligned investing. Now, for those who are still interested, maybe had some questions about logistics or the topics that'll be covered, there's actually a free info session. First of all, it's not too late. Sessions don't start until mid-April for the circles, but there is a free information session on March 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern that you can attend and ask anything that you want to know. So I will leave the link in the description. But shout out to the folks who have taken the first step. You're halfway there.
You're actually reminding me. You're actually reminding me. There was a woman named Christina. She came to our book tour event here in Atlanta. She also sent us an email a few months ago. This is the project I was telling you about. This is the program. I was trying to find the email, and in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, once we go live, and I'll just share it with her. And I can't find the email for whatever reason. But she also just, I think, commented on one of our posts. I was like, you just reminded me to remind you. I'm not going to put your whole email or your whole username out there. But Christina, this is what I was telling you about. This is what I think you're actually looking for. And so hopefully it's right up your alley, and you can join the wait list, which I wouldn't imagine.
Well, it's not a wait list.
Yeah, it's not a wait list anymore.
You just register.
Yeah, it's open now. So yeah, really excited about that. Let's dive into it. This is a bit of a continuation of a conversation that we started back in episode 202, and it's not that far back, but we knew that this was coming, and so we wanted to plant that initial seed and start talking about impact investing as a whole. It is, as you might imagine, especially if you listen to it, a very big conversation. I mean, arguably one of the few, philosophical questions out there in terms of magnitude and influence of massive, massive systems that all come together that many of us participate in, but are not particularly mindful of or actively engaged with the downstream impact of many of those decisions. And so what we wanted to do with this conversation and with Taste the Impact, which is our latest project, as Kirsten mentioned, is zero that down or drill down a little bit on one of the implications, like just one, right? Like instead of like, for lack of a better word, this used to be one of my least favorite corporate terms. You know which one am I going to say?
Double down, double click.
Now, boiling the ocean.
Oh.
They used to say, hey, we're boiling the ocean, right? Which meant that like, come on, like you're doing a lot. There's a lot in there floating around. It's a giant stew of sorts. But this is like just focusing on one thing, one sliver, even though it is still big, that I think is worthy of attention, and that is food. Not just because it's something that we are uniquely qualified to talk about, or that it's a passion of ours, or that we just so happen to always find ourselves right back at the intersection of food and money. But it's something that I think is so, and it's wild to me how much we still overlook the importance of it. And so this was, interesting for us just to kind of dive into it and say, hey, this is a great starting point. Let's just talk about how food is connected to the way that we invest our money and what some of those broader implications are when it comes to what we decide to act on and what we decide to ignore.
Yeah, food is so personal. I mean, we all eat. It's something that we all have. We all have stories tied to it, what we grew up eating, what we wish we had access to, what we feed our families. There was an article once during the pandemic that was asking, like, if you want to know how somebody's doing, ask them how they're eating or what they're eating. Yeah. Like, what are you eating is the new how are you doing kind of thing. But we rarely think about food as part of the financial system. We just kind of think of it as this separate thing.
It's a separate system.
And we wanted to close that gap. We wanted to do the same thing that we did with money, where you don't realize how much money, lack of it, or extra of it is impacting your everyday decisions. It's very ubiquitous to the point where you don't even acknowledge it. And the same is true for food. And so that was kind of the genesis of the idea. And then we just kept building on it from there.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what Taste the Impact is. Some people would call it a short documentary, a short film. I prefer the word op doc, which is like an opinion documentary
Yeah.
style film. This is the kind of creative work that we've been wanting to do for a really long time. We've been fortunate to be a part of other people's creative projects like this. This is the first time that we've stepped into the producer and director role while also being in it. And so it was a creative challenge for us, but it was something that we really, I think, rose to the occasion. And, we had a lot more experience than we thought we did having shot money on the table. And so this was just a different way of taking those same creative skills and applying a sharper lens to it. There are a couple of reasons why we decided to take this approach and to create this project. Part of it is really just our desire to be creative people. Like that's a really important part of our lives. We have a passion for storytelling and in filmmaking, especially me. And so it's something that we really felt like this is the moment. This is an opportunity. And I think when you have a partner like Invest for Better that is also interested in taking their message to the next level, it just seemed like a really, really great time. But the last reason I would say why we made this is really tied to the way that we view art and content. And I think regardless of the movement that we're talking about, I can go as far back as the civil rights movement and think about what really created change. And it's not to discredit any of the people who were influential in making progress during that time, but socially, there was not this desire to change until America saw themselves who they were undeniably
Mm-hmm.
on television in black and white. It wasn't until they watched people who were peacefully protesting being brutalized by police officers and hosed down in a brutal fashion, and those images were then broadcast around the world, that all of a sudden the invitations to the White House opened up and the Oval Office was now a place for negotiation to talk about how do we calm this down? This is not who we are. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
actually, it is, because
Yeah.
this is
Here's the picture.
undeniable. Here's the video of it. I'll fast forward a little bit. I remember when I was in high school and Good Hair by Chris Rock came out. And again, we're talking apples and oranges here, but still influential in the role that culture and comedy and all of these things can help bring to light an issue that we are just kind of casually accepting. Why are we doing this? The last one I'll say, and this is more so in line with food, was Super Size Me, right? I would say this is
Mm-hmm.
the early era of documentaries that really shocked people. And we can go on and on and on, but
Forks Over
Forks Over
Knives,
Knives or
Fahrenheit 9/11.
Blackfish. These are all
Yeah.
films, right, that really bring to light these big social issues and get people to start having conversations, get them to start questioning it. And I think what that really means is that this is who we are. And I'm not even talking about all of the issues that each of those films and projects identified. What I'm more so talking about is where we place value and emphasis. And the fact of the matter is, we as Americans value entertainment far more than we value education. And there was a time in my life where I was frustrated by that. And now I'm just embracing it, because
Mm-hmm.
even when we talk about the potential that we have as a couple or as a business or as a brand, we use reference points like LeVar Burton and Reading Rainbow. We were just having a conversation this morning about Sesame Street and reflecting on the role that it played in educating children. Look, that's not taking anything away from the education system or teachers, but those programs were far more influential because this is who we are. We enjoy being entertained. And so whenever there are opportunities to shine a light on an issue, whether it's about pushing for social change or educating people on a particular subject or trying to find ways to do a combination of those things, all in the package of entertainment, it's a win-win-win for everyone. And
Yeah.
that's what we understand to be true. And that's essentially what we are trying to accomplish with Taste the Impact with respect to impact investing.
Yeah. I love that last point because I posted this on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago where there was this article that explained how shows like Severance and Squid Games have become the most watched shows on these streaming networks. They took over shows like Ted Lasso or Bridgerton, like these escapism shows. And I talked about, very similar to what I said at the opening of the episode, I said, what are you watching is the new How Are You Feeling? Because everybody's into these dark shows that are exposing a part of ourselves that we don't have the language for or the education behind. And that becomes the basis for the conversation that people are looking to have.
Yep.
And I remember before the far right took over the word woke, woke used to mean that you were interested in having conversations that no one else was having. You were aware of something that was going on and you were interested in learning more before everybody else did, before it went mainstream. And I think this is one of those things. When we talked about values aligned investing, it was such a big topic.
Yeah.
It's so big, and we needed a way to show the day-to-day consequences of not having an intentional way of structuring and strategizing your investments, or even advocating as a shareholder, or just using the power that you're given when you own a piece of a company.
Mm-hmm.
And so this just became an extension of our mission to inspire better conversations about money. I don't know about y'all, but I was just kind of tired of the same surface level conversations about investing, the same metrics, the same goals. Everything was about maximizing returns and chasing gains. And don't get me wrong, like I love my returns. I love gains. I love positive years, but we never ask at what cost. And that is also a huge part of financial independence. It's not just the fees associated with the transaction, it's the overall cost of these decisions.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it at the time, but we have that in common with our partner, Invest for Better. It's just this belief that better is possible. You'll see it reflected in our work a lot. We, OGs know we created that ebook, Eat Better on a Budget. We're not asking you to eat differently, or well, maybe we are asking you to eat differently,
Yeah,
but
in some cases.
we're just saying that you can do better. You can't ever be perfect. Perfect isn't possible, but better definitely is. And so, there was a point, even in the video in Taste the Impact, there's a point where I asked, like, if our dollar can impact the world just as much as any vote, shouldn't we at least try to invest for better? Like, can you really be mad at people who don't vote the same as you because they don't believe something is better? Like, where do we question ourselves to say where we're settling? It's not just everybody else that's settling for an alternative that isn't ideal.
Yeah.
It's us too.
Yeah, yeah. Let's dive into food as the particular focus, or at least one of the primary focuses of Taste the Impact. Unless you're living under a rock, you have probably seen, and I'm just going to throw this number out there, and this is no exaggeration, 5 to 10 major food recalls within the last month, right? And I'm just saying this month, if the number would be higher, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, just in the last, it has become so common that it's like the weather. It's almost like saying, oh, well, yeah, it might rain on Wednesday, and you really should need to throw away all of your, what was it, creamer one day, then it's spinach probably 3-4 times a year.
Lettuce.
Maybe it's romaine lettuce. At one moment, wasn't it Lunchables? And then there was waffles for a while. You couldn't find waffles. And then there were eggs with bird flu. And it was like, there just seems to be this deterioration in our food system, and there are massive impacts of these things, yet we don't address those issues with the same level of ferocity as we do companies who have decided to dismantle their DEI policies. Right. And so these are the kinds of uncomfortable questions that we're asking people to confront. Why is it that we have chosen to ignore this deterioration, that we have decided to sort of turn a blind eye to this thing that every single one of us are reliant on, in the same vein that many of us have turned a blind eye on climate change or air quality?
It's all related.
Or it's all related. And this is what we're trying to tap in. But I want to just talk a little bit more about food, and maybe just from a different angle. So here's a quick stat for you. Since 2020, food prices have risen over 23.6%, which has outpaced overall inflation. Right?
That's crazy.
And even that statement is something that you can say and say, wow, man, that's crazy. Yeah, but that makes sense. And then we just roll on to the next thing.
Because most people have found a way to still afford it.
Correct. But even still, even if for those who haven't, and even for those who have, the implications that we now live in a country where the cost of food, like, people literally have not been able to keep up with the cost of food. And when you think about what that turns into, if this continues,
violence.
This is not the America that you will remember. And that's just food access. We're not even talking about the quality of food that is available, where food is available versus where it isn't. But this is such an important part of our quality of life, our way of living. And it's something that unfortunately many of us have completely turned a blind eye on, even though food for the vast majority of people is either the second or third, depending on who you are, it might be the first largest budget item that you have on a month to month basis.
Hmm.
There was an article from Axios that was entitled "Food Banks Are Struggling with Rising Prices," and again, that makes sense. Food banks, the entire system, one major part of the system that is there in place to provide quality food for people who literally just do not have enough food to put on the table, is obviously suffering because middle class, working class, upper class are being squeezed due to all of these other issues, right? Pulling directly from the article, they said with 65% of food banks recording an increase in the number of people served in October 2024 versus that same time last year, right? So that is the real effect of food inflation and the deterioration of the system that we are being dealt with. And going back to recalls, the other unfortunate stat that I found was just in 2024 alone, to put the percentage of recalls in perspective, just in 2024 alone, food recalls increased by 22% compared to the previous year, right?
Bananas.
No pun intended.
Ah.
But
I should have said nuts.
I know, right? But you know, it's this is crazy.
It's crazy. These aren't just headlines.
This is crazy.
You
This is
feel it.
literally what we are living through, and
You
we are
feel it.
completely ignoring it and deciding to focus on all of these other things, which I just think pale in comparison or pale in levels of importance when compared to like food that we all need to survive, not just for ourselves, for our children, dude.
I don't
Like,
know that ignoring it is the right word. I don't think we're ignoring it. It's just that we feel powerless. We feel like there's nothing that you can do about it. And that's just not true. That's
correct.
exactly what they want you to believe. But there absolutely is something that you can do about it. And when we talk about these systems, food systems, financial systems, we literally mean it. What we eat, what's available to us, what's considered affordable, those things are not accidental. They're designed in that way.
Mhm.
We learned in Taste the Impact that about 10 companies control the majority of what we eat. And these companies
Globally,
globally, right?
not just in the United
Yeah.
States, globally.
Yeah. These are the companies that set prices. They determine what's quote unquote healthy through their
Mhm.
marketing. They influence government subsidies that make processed foods cheaper than fresh foods. These are all things that explain why something like a food desert exists. It's not because there isn't demand. It's because grocery chains make their decisions for locations
Mhm.
based on profit instead of access, based on this idea that there's more juice out there to squeeze versus the idea that food is a human right and we should ensure that every citizen has access to it.
Yeah.
And even all the recalls that you're talking about, they're a byproduct of all of the cost cutting, the consolidation, the deregulation, as unpopular of a word as that is. That's a symptom of what happens. Absolutely, there's going to be more recalls. You're seeing all these brands that are recalling products based on contamination or mislabeled allergens or unsafe additives, all the things. And it's because there are fewer companies, which leads to more centralization, which leads to a higher risk when one link in the already janky supply chain fails. And I know I'm using a lot of like words that people may not be familiar with, but what it boils down to is there's a supply chain that ensures that the food that is grown on farms across the country actually makes it to your grocery store, your doorstep, makes it to the factories where things are put together and processed and sold eventually. And that supply chain doesn't have enough human interest in it. There's a lot of people that are in it to make money and money alone. And when you do that, you absolutely find ways to cut corners and come out with a product that is still acceptable enough for people to buy it, but isn't necessarily healthy or nutritious or good for anybody or anything.
Yeah. Acceptable, I think, is the operable word there, right?
Yeah.
That's the key word there. Acceptable. That becomes the bar. Not necessarily what is ideal or necessary or even like uniquely designed or provided to reverse a set of issues that may be disproportionately impacting a particular group, right? It's just what's best and
Yeah. It's
profit
acceptable.
and
It's fine.
profitability is prioritized over public health. And so to go
I
back.
mean, that just pisses me off because you hear food is medicine all the time. Like that's the
Mhm.
metaphor that people most associate with food. Food is energy, food is medicine. You got depression or any other neuro issue, it's because of your gut health, and your gut health is directly related to your diet. And we've just seen so much about people being able to reverse chronic conditions through diet, and the idea that we wouldn't treat it as such. If they were just all willy-nilly about our medications, some people believe that they are.
Mhm, they are.
Yeah, some people believe that they are. But like to your point, we'd be raising hell, and
Yeah.
this is just something that we are very docile about.
Yeah, yeah. So if it sounds like we're beating people up, here's why. All right. Um, and I'll just start with the broader dot that connects what many of us do with these issues. We've been talking about the food systems, we've been talking about the government and deregulation and all of these issues. But what a lot of people don't realize is, especially if you are a big fan of passive investing and you believe and understand the keys to investing is to keep it simple and to focus on minimizing costs. When you do that, you are ignoring what many of those companies do. And when we talked about the impact investing episode, I gave a few examples of those things. But in this case, we're talking specifically about food, right? So here's what we're doing, right? And what do we call this? Like talking out of both sides of our neck. So here we go. On one side, to your point, like championing the benefits and the perks of passive investing, accepting that there are going to be some downstream impacts. But then a lot of us spend so much time and energy trying to correct preventable issues that are directly tied to the food that we consume. Many of us spend a lot of time championing the issues that are directly affecting, in our case, the Black community. Some people take it a step further and focus specifically on Black women and the issues that are directly affecting them. Yet many of us have not connected the dots between the food that we eat and why those foods ever showed up on the shelves to begin with, and the role that we play as passive investors in continuing to send a signal that this is perfectly acceptable to the companies that produce those products, right? It is a disgusting and vicious cycle that a lot of us, I don't believe, are recognizing that they are a part of. And that is exactly what we're trying to get people to see. This is an inefficient process just for yourself. If you are going to spend so much time making mindful decisions about the food that you put into your body, you should probably put a comparable level of time being mindful of the companies that you're invested in, right? Because you are contributing to the very issues that you say frustrates you or hurt you for your community. That's what we're asking people to reckon with. Let me give you an example. If you have a standard S&P 500 index fund, which I would imagine many people do, you are likely invested in some of those big companies. Like, I'm just going to call them out, not starting beef or anything like that, but like Coca-Cola. These are major companies: PepsiCo, Nestle, Tyson Foods. These are major companies that were part of the Big Ten that you're referring to, that have a significant level of control over the global food supplies, right? And so again, while you may be personally avoiding those products, making different decisions about what you put in your shopping cart, you are also profiting from those companies.
Mhm.
Right. And so we're asking people not just to think as consumers, but also to think about this process from an investment standpoint. And let me just address a couple of things here. This is not about blaming people, right? Like, I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that we are saying shame on you for being an investor in Coca-Cola while deciding that you don't serve your kids Coke, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's not about that. This is simply about awareness, because I know for a fact a lot of people don't think about it that way. So we're just asking you to be a little bit more about it.
And
Uh,
there's lots of systems that you didn't create, but you
correct,
get to choose how
correct,
you engage in them, right?
correct.
There are lots of people who were alive during legalized segregation
Mhm.
and decided that that was not what they were going to do with their lives. There are
Correct.
lots of people who still had interracial relationships, friendships, businesses, because that's not what they wanted to do. And this is very similar. Like, we're not blaming you for the way that it is. We're asking you to be aware and to think about it a little differently.
Yeah, and to also accept the fact that this is what the other political party is highlighting in many ways as well, right? This is
Yes.
at the heart of their opposition, which is to say, well, if we do that, if we go so far as to say this and to try to regulate this and to do all of these things, and these other things go away, which is also true. And so we're just trying to, going back to our mission, inspire better conversations about money, and
Bring
help
more
us
people to the
see
middle.
the other side,
Yeah.
which in some cases showcases the role that we are playing in this. This is
And
also not about telling people to never invest in these companies. I remember
correct.
having a conversation with someone years ago who was very absolute about this. And the topic of conversation was around climate change. And it was like, what are you, as an influential person in the Black community and this major platform, doing to encourage your community to make better decisions about climate change? And at the time, I was like, dude, that is not my ministry, nor do I think it is fair to ask people who did not create a problem to help with the cleanup. You know, my point of view has changed over time. Now we're asking, because we are more advanced, many of us have made some decisions. I know everybody can't do this, but figure out a way to not necessarily even rectify, but just like be comfortable with the role that you're playing. And if you're uncomfortable, then there are a number of things that you can do about it. But again, starting with awareness and at least being mindful of the role that you play in contributing to these issues. And the last thing that I'll say, because I know many of us struggle with nuanced thinking. We're very this or that, black or white, rich or poor, good or bad. This is not about perfection. I'm not saying only invest in companies that do good, because I think that's probably impossible, right? But we are asking people to just ask a better set of questions. Like, what are you comfortable with? What do you know about this company? What do you know about the products that they create? What do you know about the connection between those products and not just your investment, but the impact that they have on social good? That's what we're asking people to do, and that's what we have basically tasked people with doing, with a specific emphasis on food and taste the impact.
Absolutely. This is definitely not about saying never invest in these companies. And I remember having that conversation with Janine, the co founder of Invest for Better, because she's like, what are you asking people to do? And it's like, I'm asking them to be aware of it. I'm asking
To
them to
think,
put on their long term thinking cap, which is what investors should have, and think about the long term implications. There's not a single company that is all good or all bad. There are great things that Coca-Cola does for our communities, and then there are terrible things that they do. It's a combination in all things. And what we're trying to do is bring people closer to the middle, farther away from nonchalant or apathy or whatever, just ignoring, and closer to the idea that if we can use our dollars differently, we can send a signal about the parts of the company that we want them to keep versus the parts of the company that we want them to sunset and do away with. And that's the goal here. Again, as investors, we're trained to think long term. We don't make decisions based on what things are today. We're always looking at trends and risks and future value. And when it comes to our portfolio values, you have to do the same thing here.
yeah,
You can't stop at the benefit of having more money in your portfolio today if we're not looking at the other side of the coin, which is quality of life and expected expenses. We think we're winning if our portfolios go up, but what happens when the rising costs of healthcare, food insecurity,
yeah.
and preventable diseases chip away at those gains?
Yeah, you're basically gonna walk away with the spoils from one industry and then give it to the medical industry and the insurance industry, right?
Yes,
Like that is wholly inefficient.
that's literally what's happening
Yes,
right
yes.
now.
Your portfolio did great. You ignored these things,
Except
and now,
everything's more expensive.
correct.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like cheaper, higher processed foods don't actually save consumers in the long run. And there's tons of research. All that happens is that the bill shifts to healthcare. And we're seeing that right now. Diet related diseases, we're talking diabetes, heart disease, cost the US healthcare system over $1 trillion annually. That's what we as a society are paying to deal with these long term consequences of a food system that is not designed for health.
No.
Our supply chain is so fragile that food prices aren't just high now, they're likely to stay that way. Between all of the food recalls, the shortages, the corporate consolidation, all these grocery stores that are merging, all of these private equity firms that are buying up big farms and lands, all of the climate impacts where farmers are losing entire crops of seasonal vegetables. And I won't even bring in the tariffs that we're trying to implement on having fresh produce shipped from other countries where these aren't as much of an issue.
Yep.
And so this idea that like, oh, it's temporary, oh, it'll smooth itself out. And it's like, probably not. Like there's no evidence that we either have a supply chain that is being created in the United States or that our supply chain is being fixed to the point where it won't be as fragile. And I'm an optimistic person. Like I am a very optimistic person, but I am not seeing a world that drastically lowers food costs for us in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And nobody budgeted for that.
No.
Like, other than the people who already have farms and are growing their own, or have, relationships with their local farmers and get the boxes of fresh produce, or people who cook seasonally and make sure that they're using seasonal ingredients. Like, we are culturally not trained for a future where food is not as available as it is today.
Especially not working parents, they're just already stretched. And so, like, we are very much ill equipped. And so, all of that to say, it's a big problem, but it's also a big opportunity. And I believe that this is going to be a turning point, or at least a contributor to a turning point for a lot of people. I would imagine this is a topic of conversation that some people are very familiar with, but others are not. And so our role as creatives and as community builders is to do good with the time and the platform, and the influence and the skill set and the privileges that we have. And this is one of many ways that we've done, but I would say without question is one that we're particularly proud of. We do not ask for much. And I take great pride in saying that.
I'll never ask y'all for
I
nothing.
really don't. I really,
Except at the end when I beg for that review.
yeah, well, that's a common courtesy. It's the least you could do. But I really, really do want to encourage everyone that is listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube to watch it. If you're already here on YouTube, then you're just a couple clicks away. It's on our channel. It'll be up by the time this episode is released. It will also be on Facebook as well as LinkedIn. We will have snippets. We will have clips. It is not that long. I want to give a shout out to Rihanna Lynn, who was our guest
How did we
of
forget
honor.
to mention Rihanna?
Well, you forgot. I didn't forget. I was going to mention it. Rihanna Lynn, I will let you describe who she is, but she is the
watch the video.
resident expert. Well, I just thought, UNC Pride, this being March, there might be some type of, add on there that you would have. She's
That's your
also
incentive to go click the video.
a Tar Heel alum. But if you're a Tar Heel, go watch it. There'll be at least 2 Tar Heels on the screen. But no, we don't ask for much, man. So watch it, share it, send it to someone. This is the kind of thing that, again, we're proud of. I would imagine if you rock with us, it's something that you should be proud of as well. Because, we talk about this just from a standpoint of content, but you cannot be upset when your favorite show or your favorite podcast, decides that they don't want to do it anymore. And a lot of it boils down to there just not being enough measurable support, right? Measurable support. Like, it's one thing to say, like, oh, I rock with them. I love what they're doing, love what they represent. But you got to click the share button. You got to leave a comment, even if it's just some emojis. Because when you do that, the algorithms work in our favor, and that sends a signal to all production companies to say, we want more of this. I would love for this to be the beginning of several conversations. I would love for Taste the Impact to be a series, right? And so these are the kind of conversations that I want to see more of. I would imagine a lot of people feel that way, and so we're proud of it. We hope that you watch it. We know you will enjoy it. Do what you do, man. If you have a
Yes.
newsletter, share it. Like, do your thing. Do what you do. And again, not just for us, but for people like you.
For your stomachs, for your appetite. Do it for your future healthcare bill.
That too.
And y'all know the YouTube algorithm rewards videos that people watch for longer lengths of time. So shout out again to Listen to the End gang. Gang. Shout out. But listen to this video, watch this video until the end for as long as possible. It's one of those things that you can put it on while you fold clothes or while you take a walk. Like, you don't have to stare at the screen while it's on. You can just get the conversation. It's obviously beautiful because we made it, but you can just listen to it as well. So make sure that you turn it on, continue to do what you normally do. And for those who are leaving this conversation and they're like, yeah, but you didn't tell me what to do. You didn't tell me to divest. You didn't tell me where to put my money instead. And the answer to that is because that's what Invest for Better has created. They've created a system, a curriculum, an organization, a community with thousands of women with just as many options for alternatives and ways that you can align your investments with your money. You may not want to touch the portfolio that's been serving you for the last 10 or 15 years, and that's totally understandable. I'm not here to judge you. That's not my ministry. But there might be things that you want to learn about where to put your money going forward. There are active companies, there are active funds that are actually working against these harms, and they need investment just like Coca-Cola does. Coca-Cola actually don't need no more money. They got enough money to last for as long as they want to be here, right? There are companies that are actively trying to fight for freshwater access and ensuring that all of our beverages aren't full of sugar. There's a whole healthy soda movement. Well, Poppy just got acquired by Pepsi, but that's not the point. The point is, Invest for Better is an organization that's actively working on this. So again, there's an info session this Wednesday, March 26th, where they can answer any questions you have about the Circle experience. They also offer a free membership. I'll put the link in the description. So if you're interested in just staying informed on values aligned investing, maybe Circle's not ready for you yet, but like you get to it, there's that option too. But I'm asking you to change your media diet and start to get informed about some of this stuff so that when your actual diet becomes an issue, you at least know what the problem was.
You know what I love about this is that it truly is a wealth of resources, Invest for Better, in terms of people and curriculum. And I think that's important because so many people just don't have the time. Like, we are time crunched and time stretched. And I think it is very common for people to have a quick little conversation, release a podcast episode, maybe a little panel discussion, but we just keep on circling the wagon of the problem. And what Invest for Better does is says, like, no, you can actually do something about it. This is for the practitioners of us, the people who want to actually start doing it with no pressure. Right? Like, start where you want, take your time. We're going to be here, but you don't have to do the work. I'm not asking you to go buy 10, 15 books or do a bunch of things. It's all been organized for you. There are people of all walks of life, all levels of expertise. And so you will find a community, you will find a sub-community within your community. You will be surrounded by your people who can help you. And over time, you will become the kind of person who then helps somebody else. And from there, it just builds and builds and builds. And over time, that's how we change the world. That's how we change our communities. That's how we say, we used to let people smoke cigarettes on planes. And now, look, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, we used to let people drive drunk with no seatbelt. We used to let people,
and now we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
We know better.
We used to have a smoke section in the restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Over there.
Not like the smoke wafts,
and I'm telling you, that was in the 80s.
That was in my childhood.
That was in the 80s.
Yes.
Like that's what I'm talking about. Like little things.
And then eventually there was no smoking section.
Correct.
You got to go outside.
And it was backlash.
There was backlash. But we also normalized it. And that's what we're saying here, where it's like some of this shit that these companies get away with should not be normal.
Yeah.
It is the equivalent of having a smoking section and thinking that you're not going to be harmed by it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, like what do we need? What do we need? More research on secondhand smoke? What do we need?
Yeah.
More research on diet-related diseases?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. You know what I'm saying? Dang, y'all got me all aggressive up in here. Thank you for listening to another episode. Go on down to the if you like what you heard, go on down to the comments, leave us a note, tell us what you think, or head to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a 5-star review. And I forgot what I was trying to say.
Oh, man, go get you a cigarette.
We'll see y'all next week. If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.